Welcome to the Start With Who podcast, where we explore how understanding who you are shapes the way you lead, work, and live. I'm Joe Shannon with Newton Institute, and I'll be joined by Rick Newton as we bring reflective conversations, real-world stories, and practical insights to help you start with who in every area of life. Our goal is to help you discover your unique design and elevate your life, leadership, and legacy. It's great to have you with us. Let's get started with today's episode. Hey, Rick.
Hey, Joe.
So at this point, we've spent the last 4 episodes building up to this episode. Episode 3 walked us through the compass framework, which applies at the personal level and the organization level. In episode 4, we tackled what I've seen from my own life, but also through coaching other leaders. One of the biggest obstacles to actually living in alignment with that compass, which is the obstacle we call head trash. Check out that episode if you haven't already seen it. And now that we've cleared that runway, I want to focus today on what becomes possible, what actually changes in your life when your personal compass is clearly defined and when you're aimed at the right target. So Rick, we referenced this line a lot. I think we did a few episodes back. Maybe today is finally where it lands. If you aim at the moon and you're off by just 1 degree, you'll miss your target by 4,000 miles. Do you want to take it from there?
Yeah. So that 1 degree metaphor really speaks to the heart of why we built the compass in the first place. If you're NASA or SpaceX, you can't get to the moon by being mostly right. They have to be precise. And so if they're off by even just 1 degree at launch, they're going to miss the target by 4,000 miles. And if they aim for the sun and are off by that same 1 degree, they'll miss it by 1.6 million miles. And we love that metaphor because we think that that applies to your life as well. If you haven't clarified who you are, why you're here, how you want to live, and where you're headed, even the slightest misalignment compounds over time. You wake up one day and you realize you've missed the life that you were actually designed to live. And the personal compass keeps you aimed at the right target. And when it's clearly defined, every area of your life benefits.
Yeah, and there are a lot of meaningful areas in a person's life. Why don't you start to walk us through where the personal compass actually shows up, how it really gets applied in someone's life?
Yeah, absolutely. There are at least 8 major areas that we use for a person's life that a well-defined personal compass positively impacts. And I'll just walk through them briefly. The first are your core beliefs. The compass helps make sure your actions are aligned with what you believe, and what you say matches what you do. Second is decision-making. From the small daily decisions to the major life decisions, the compass becomes a filter for whether something is right for you or not. Third is work-life integration. We say integration instead of balance because balance can imply a trade-off. The compass helps you bring your full self to both, so work and life are integrated and they're not competing. Fourth would be personal and professional relationships. The compass changes how you understand yourself and others, which transforms every relationship in your life. Fifth would be personal health. When you know who you are and where you're headed, you prioritize your physical and mental well-being differently because you understand it matters for the life that you're designed to live. Sixth, financial stewardship. The compass aligns how you earn, save, spend, give, and steward your resources with your design, your purpose, your values, and your vision. Seventh would be career path and what some people call vocational discernment. What are you going to do day to day? The compass helps you find the work that's not just your job, but it's an authentic expression of how you're uniquely designed to contribute to the world. And eighth would be leadership effectiveness. As you increase your self-awareness and start operating more authentically out of your natural design instead of who you've been told to be, your effectiveness as a leader goes up dramatically.
Yeah, wow. So there's a lot there, a lot of different areas. Let's dig into a couple to just see what that really looks like practically. And maybe let's start with relationships, because I think this is where a lot of listeners will feel immediate relevance. We all have relationships. We all interact with different people. And maybe some people would say they have some great relationships, maybe some that could be a lot better. So in your experience, how does the compass actually change or elevate these relationships?
Yeah. So I'll be transparent here, Joe. This is one that I learned the hard way. Sad to say, for the first 10 years of my marriage to Terry, I have to admit, I just thought she was wrong. The way she approached things, whether it was stuff that we were doing around the house, um, or making decisions, the way she made decisions and what she got excited about, none of that made sense to me. And then it hit me again, somewhere around year 10, the literal light bulb moment, the light bulb went off. And I realized that she's not wrong. She's just different. And she's designed totally different from me.
Yeah.
So I started looking at that through a new lens.
Yeah, we'll try to gloss over the fact that you said it took 10 years for you to realize that, but I'd love you to share more. What has design differently actually look like in your marriage personally? How have you worked through that together?
Yeah. So here's one example that we encounter every day. Terry is, we're both on opposite ends of the curve in terms of form and function, and she is absolutely form over function. For her, anything that we work on together, house projects, room layouts, property design, it has to be beautiful. It has to flow together, and things have to be designed to work together aesthetically. And I'm the exact opposite. I'm wired for function. I rarely take into account how something looks. I just want it to work. So for 10 years, I treated her preference as a nice to have. And once I understood it better and realized that that was part of her design, something that was a huge gift and not a flaw, everything changed. So now, when we work on projects, we lead with a different question. How do we incorporate both beauty and function? And the result is almost always better than what either of us would have produced alone. She makes my function more beautiful, and I help her beauty, her beautiful ideas, more functional. And we both end up with something that we love.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'm hearing an emphasis on complementing, not competing. And like you say, it took quite a while to figure out these differences. Maybe to apply it in a different way, how have you seen this principle of not wrong, just different scale into professional relationships as well?
Yeah, I don't think there's any difference. It absolutely applies there as well. It's the same principle, just applied in a different context. What you find is that in every team, every partnership, every working relationship, there are big differences in how people are designed. Some people are detailed oriented, some are big picture, some are decisive, some are deliberate, some are people oriented, some are more task oriented. And too often we look at those differences and judge them. We think the other person is doing something wrong because they're not doing it our way. But once you understand your own design and you understand theirs, you stop trying to make them to be more like you. You start asking, how can I combine what makes us each unique to get to a better outcome than either of us could have done alone? And that's where collaboration really starts. That's where trust deepens. That's where teams stop competing internally and start multiplying their effectiveness.
I love it. Yeah. So if a listener has any relationship in their life right now, marriage, a business partnership, difficult team dynamic, what's something really practical they could try?
Yeah, I guess I could think of two things. The first is to do your own compass work. You can't fully appreciate someone else's design until you start understanding your own design. And then second, get curious about their design. Don't try to change everything too fast. Just get curious enough to start learning more about them. Stop trying to win the argument about who's right. Replace they're wrong with, oh, they're different. And then ask yourself or even ask them, how can our differences work together? And I believe that one shift has the power to change every relationship in your life.
Hmm. Yeah, there's lots to think about there. Let's shift gears to another area that you talked about, and that's the area of money. And this is one where I would say it's maybe a little harder to see the connection between money and identity. Maybe most people tend to treat financial planning as its own thing, just make good financial decisions. Why would that need to be linked to my own personal design or identity? How do you see the personal compass changing that?
Yeah, I love this question because financial stewardship is an often overlooked area when it comes to this work. So, let me tell you about a wealth management executive I've been working with recently. He runs a wealth management and financial advisory firm, and they have this incredible motto, providing meaning to money. And their whole approach to financial planning is built on the idea that money isn't an end in and of itself, it's a tool for living a meaningful life. And when they sit down with a couple or a family, they don't just ask the standard questions about retirement age and risk tolerance. They ask about their dreams, their future, what they want their lives to look like in, say, 10, 20, or 30 years. They want to understand each client's why, their purpose in life, so that they can align that financial plan with that. And I think this approach is great in that they know that a good financial plan has to find out what the client's purpose and vision of the future is, but they didn't have a framework to actually get there.
Mm. Yeah, and maybe what I'm hearing you say is purpose and vision, long term, 30 years in the future, sometimes shorter than that, which we've talked about before. That's where most people start. And I know the story already, but I'd love you to talk about what shifted when you began talking to this leader about starting with who and how that's different.
Yeah, well, that's where the light bulb went off for him. When he heard me talking about starting with who, he immediately recognized that that was the missing piece. Starting with who was the way to actually get to the underlying purpose, values, and vision of their clients that would be informing their financial plans. And he started to notice that financial planning is downstream of identity work. If you don't know who you are, why you're here, what you value, and where you're headed, again, the 4 questions around the personal compass, how can you possibly make decisions about your financial resources? So we're now partnering with him to incorporate personal compass work as a differentiating offering for their clients. They're now going to make sure that the compass comes first, and then the financial plan flows from it, properly aligned with their DNA, their purpose, their values, and their vision.
It's really interesting, and maybe without doing the DNA work, you might actually just make something up that sounds like a good purpose that maybe even attaches some kind of meaning to money. But like we said at the beginning, right, if you're off by 1 or a few degrees, you might actually use your money and your resources for something that could be better spent somewhere else. So can you walk us through what actually changes in terms of financial decisions when somebody has their compass defined?
Yeah, well, I would say without a compass, financial decisions tend to be reactive. You inherit money, so what do you do with that? You get a bonus. What are you going to do with that? Your kids reach college age. How are you going to pay for that? But with a compass, those decisions become so much more clear because you already know who you are. You know what you value, why you exist, and where you're headed. And you've already thought through that. For instance, if generosity is one of your values, you might give to charities or to certain causes that you're passionate about. If your vision involves getting settled and buying a house or starting a business or just paying for your children's education someday, it will affect how you save and invest. There's a connection between who you are and what you do. You will always need resources in order to fulfill your purpose. And just as important, if something doesn't align with your purpose, values, or vision, you know what to say no to. You stop chasing returns for the sake of returns. You start stewarding your time, your talent, and your treasure towards a life of meaning. And that's what provides meaning to money. I think that's what this firm is really getting at when they say providing meaning to money.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And you have to wonder how financial advisors are able to provide wise counsel if they're not already doing that. It sounds like it would be a little disconnected, right? I want my financial advisor to take that approach.
I wonder how they do it too, but I do think they do it in part. I think they probably go a little bit deep in some of those areas, but they don't go fully deep enough, and they probably don't look at it holistically like we do with the personal compass.
Yeah. So one last personal area, and this one I think you'll have a lot to say about because your own story is such a powerful example. Career path, use the word vocational discernment. Walk us through how the compass shows up there.
Yeah, my own career arc is probably the best illustration I have for this. And looking back now, I can see over time, I was subconsciously following my compass long before I had the framework to describe it. I started college as a chemical engineering major. And at the time, I thought that would be my ticket out of a life of poverty, which is how I grew up. But for me, it was extremely difficult, that major. To get A's and B's, I had to put an extraordinary amount of effort into studying. And partway through that college experience, I added a computer science degree to that because I found that I was really good at programming and I enjoyed it way more than chemical engineering. It too was a hard major, but it came so much more naturally for me. So out of college, I joined Accenture. I got to work on some really challenging IT software projects with big clients, and I did well. And a few years later, I went and got my MBA because I wanted to understand business more. I only had one business class in 5 years of undergraduate study, and I realized that I needed to fill that gap if I was going to advance my career. And what I didn't expect is that I would take to business like a duck takes to water. It was during this time that I realized I was born to be an entrepreneur. I didn't want to build other people's companies forever. I wanted to build my own. And that led to what eventually became Newton Consulting.
Yeah, I know there's a lot more to the story here. The way I've heard you tell this story is that you had another realization, maybe about 20 years in. Is that right?
Yeah. I think, part of, laying out that compass, a lot of it evolves over time. I mean, we live life and we get more information. And so then that informs these 8 areas that we're talking about. And it started informing not just who I was, but the kind of work that I wanted to start doing. And, I was picking up clues to my design throughout my career. Engineering showed that I was a problem solver. Through computer science, I found that my preferred way to solve business problems was through software. And then the MBA showed me that I wanted to start my own business, mostly focused on technology, even though we branched into a number of different offerings. But eventually I came to realize that I'm actually a blacksmith. I want to build the tools that consultants and coaches like me need to be able to help leaders, teams, and organizations unlock their full potential. And that's when the Newton Institute was born. And it took me almost 40 years to find out what my ultimate purpose was, what I believe my ultimate purpose was. And that was to build tools like the personal compass to help people not take as long as I did to understand their DNA, their purpose, their values, and their vision.
So, what would you say to someone listening who's walking through a bit of a transition right now? Maybe it's something urgent if they got let go or some situation didn't work out, they're searching for the next opportunity. Or maybe they have a choice to stay where they're at, but they're unfulfilled, kind of wondering, feeling like something's missing or they're missing out on something. Someone just knows that what they've been doing is burning them out. What can people actually do about that if they feel like they're in that transition stage, considering what's next? How do you use the principle of design to make sure you're headed in the right direction?
Yeah, I think it's really simple. Don't start with, well, what could I do or what should I do? Start with, who am I? I think this is the biggest mistake that people make at career crossroads. They ask, well, what's the next opportunity? What's going to pay more? What's the next title? All of those things are legitimate, but they're downstream questions, not the foundational one. Your career isn't a series of disconnected jobs. It's a refining process. Look back at your story. Look at the moments when you were most alive. Those are clues. And when you get clarity on the who, then the what should I be doing becomes so much easier.
I know we've covered a lot in this episode. So as we wrap up, what's something you want listeners to walk away with?
Well, I'd just say this. The personal compass is a force multiplier to realizing your full potential. When your compass is clearly defined, it positively impacts every area of your life, your beliefs, your decisions, your time, your relationships, your health, as we've gone into your finances, your career, and your leadership. The inverse is also true. Without a clear compass, all of those areas suffer quietly, gradually, until you wake up one day and realize that you've drifted off course. So I would say invest the time, answer those 4 foundational questions, and then live from them. Apply them to your life. And through that process, you'll discover even more about yourself, which will inform and refine your compass along the way.
Yeah. Thanks, Rick. Let's close there. How can people get in touch and learn more?
Yeah, same as always. You can follow me on X at Rick Newton 777, or on LinkedIn. You can also visit our website, newtoninstitute.com. For individuals, I'd encourage you to check out our Personal Compass videos on the homepage, and the Personal Compass program on the startwithwho.ai platform. That's where you can begin your own compass journey, answering the 4 most important questions you'll ever ask. And then you can also, on the newtoninstitute.com website, you can read the first few chapters of the book, Start With Who. It's currently in draft form, but I think that would be very helpful. And you can go to newtoninstitute.com/startwithwhobook to find that PDF.
That's great. So next time we'll talk more about the organizational compass, right?
Yeah, that's right. So next episode, we'll go deeper into the power of the organizational compass. Same 4 questions, but now with we and us instead of I and me. And the compass shows up at the organizational level just as profoundly across things like business strategy, branding, culture. And one thing I think we're going to touch on is AI adoption as well, which is an important topic these days. Okay. So we'll talk through 8 critical areas where the organizational compass shows up, and then go deeper into some of those areas like business strategy, corporate branding and marketing, and AI adoption.
Thanks for joining us today on the Start With Who podcast. If today's episode sparked a question, please drop it in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Please take a moment to rate the show, follow us, and subscribe so you're notified when new episodes are released. And if you'd like to learn more, visit newtoninstitute.com to sign up for our newsletter and explore what's possible when you start with who. Thanks again for being part of this journey. We'll see you in the next episode.